The years from 1876 until 1914 were a period of rapid colonization of the African continent by European powers. This was a period when Africa witnessed the unprecedented invasion, which history labels the scramble for Africa. 100 years later, and Africa is seeing history repeat itself. The only difference is that it has now attracted interest beyond Europe. America and the Asian giants are fighting to capture the attention of African governments. The reason? Its market and its natural resources. Various countries are positioning themselves as Africa's better partners, and the recent posturing by various big economies attests to this. Not to be left behind is the United States of America. Speaking in Tanzania during his recent visit to Africa, the US President Barack Obama said America is looking at a new partnership model that is based not just on aid and assistance, but on trade and partnership. He said an example of this new approach is a $7 billion 5-year initiative intended to double access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa in partnership with African governments and the private sector.
I'm also pleased that Tanzania is going to be one of the first participants in the new effort that I announced yesterday, Power Africa, with its goal of doubling access to electricity. This will mean more reliable and affordable electricity for more Tanzanians, and it's something that we want to spread all across the continent. Later today, I'll be announcing another initiative to improve trade with and within Africa, starting here with the East African community.
China and India are also accelerating trade and investment in Africa through what has been termed Africa's Silk Road. In an exclusive interview with First Issues recently, the Indian High Commissioner to Botswana said there is no ambiguity with regards to his country's mission to Africa.
The new focus of India's foreign policy in the last 3 heads of missions conference that I have gone to New Delhi, I have been told loud and clear that the new focus of India's foreign policy is the African continent.
What is also of great interest is that a few days after the US President's visit to Africa, where he articulated America's new policy on Africa, China's leader, President Xi Jinping, followed suit and has just completed his foreign debut as the head of state after visiting 3 African countries: Tanzania, South Africa, and the Republic of Congo. Tonight we host China's ambassador to Botswana, His Excellency Zhen Zhuqiang, and explore further the new scramble for Africa, as well as Africa's discomfort. On our program tonight, our focus is on China. Huaying Lai Tao, First Issues. Whilst benefiting from the real infrastructure development that Chinese companies have brought to Africa and Botswana, we are sometimes accused of sleepwalking into neo-colonialism. But is China truly the latest in a string of the continent's colonizers, taking what they want and giving little back?
China has helped a lot in improving the infrastructure of African countries. But I can't agree to the saying that China's relationship with Africa is so-called neo-colonialism. And relations between China and Africa started not about 10 years ago, it's about nearly 60 years ago, in early years of 1950s. During that time, African people are struggling for the national independence, and in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, Chinese government provide political, moral, and logistical supports to African people in their endeavor to gain independence. And in the same time, to the newly independent African countries, we provide financial assistance to help them strengthen the independence, to build up their national economy. We help them build schools, hospitals, and the water supply systems and other projects that is closely related to the livelihood of African country. And I want to emphasize that during that time, China didn't take away any drop of crude oil, didn't take away 1 kilo of minerals. So since the world came into the new century, the emphasis of African countries to build up their country has moved from the political into economic area. So the development, and both economic development and social development, and to raise up the living standard of the African people is the main task of African countries. So African people want to change their natural resources into a real economic development. So China this time extend our helping hands and to help African countries to change their natural resources into real economic development. Chinese companies are doing business with their African counterpart on an equal basis. Chinese companies are purchasing natural resources from Africa with an equivalent exchange. And I don't think that's a colonialism. Colonialism has its original meaning. That means to acquire political and economic advantages through force, to enslave African people and to seize lands and to sabotage African culture. So if we say, if we define colonialism as importing raw materials from some area and selling manufactured products to the same area, that's new colonialism. I think that means all the countries that have trade relations with African countries are practicing colonialism. So it's not fair. And for example, China imports a lot of raw materials from Australia. Can we say China is colonizing Australia? I don't think Australians will think so, because it's a fair trade on the voluntary basis.
There is no doubt that China has brought cheap consumer goods, roads, and schools to many parts of Africa over the last decade. But some of the continent's leaders are increasingly pushing for it to provide more of what many Africans really want: jobs. China has become one of our most important trading partners in a short space of time. How do we ensure that our relationship prospers and remains one that benefits both parties?
Before I came to this country, I made a study about our economic cooperation relations. I found that the trade between China and Botswana started in 1982. And in the first years, in 1980s, even 90s, the volume of trade are not very big. And only since 2008, the volumes of trade between China and Botswana are increasing fast. And at present, the average volume of trade are about $300 million a year. And according to the Statistic Bureau of Botswana, China now is the third largest partner of Botswana, trade partner of Botswana. And I found that the balance of trade is favorable to China's side. And China don't seek one-sided surplus. So we seek a balanced, healthy, sustainable bilateral trade. So we take a lot of measures to improve the balance of trade between our two countries. We established pavilions, special pavilions for African businessmen to demonstrate and sell their products in a trade fair in Guangzhou. That is a very well-known trade fair in China. It opened twice a year, and the trade fair have lasted for more than 40 years, and a very popular one. A lot of African businessmen came to that trade fair to do business. And we also established a trade center for African products in a place called Yiwu City of Zhejiang province. That's a special place for African products.
A flood of Chinese produce is reported to have accelerated the decline in industrialization since the 1980s. South African-based Brenthurst Foundation says Africa's textile industry alone has lost 750,000 jobs over the last decade.
The early days of July, I drove along the A1 road to Mawong to attend the opening ceremony of the BDP Congress. So I used this opportunity to visit some townships or cities. The first stop is Mahalape, second Palape, third is Francistown, of course, and the fourth is Mawong. And then when I went back, I stopped at the Serowe. So I found in each place there are Chinese shops, and I visited most of them. I want to have first-hand information about Chinese businessmen and Chinese products. I found the quality of Chinese products are relatively good. The owner of Chinese shops said their products is more suitable for the ordinary Botswana people because they can afford it. I found in this country there are a lot of very advanced, sophisticated luxury shopping center, and they sell very expensive products there. I think these two kind of shops can complementary, and for the high market consumer, for the middle market consumer, and for the low market consumer. I think with the coming of Chinese light industry products, they bring down the prices of local market. That means more and more ordinary people can afford products they need. As for the sabotage to the local textile industry, I also make an investigation. In Botswana, several years ago, there were more than 10 textile factories, and they export textile to United States under the framework of AGOA. I think the decreasing of numbers of factories is not because of Chinese garments to this country, because all the factories, textile factories, their market is outside Botswana, not in this country. So I think the decreasing of numbers are because of the change of the international market, not by the Chinese products.
What of the concept of knowledge transfer in an effort to make this relationship more sustainable? Have you considered ways, or are you currently implementing ways in which the growing number of Chinese companies in Botswana or Africa can foster this knowledge transfer?
In China, we have a very, very old saying. That means when we help others, when we give other people a helping hand, we say to give someone a fish is good, but to teach him fishing is better. So now in Botswana, there are a lot of Chinese companies. They are mainly construction companies. And we encourage them to do transfer of knowledge to the local people. Actually, some Chinese companies are doing this, and some companies are providing some training courses for the local workers, and some companies even send some local employees to China for further study.
Your Excellency, what of the future of the relationship between China and Africa and China and Botswana?
China are following a policy, we call it open up to the outside world. China welcome all the investments from every corner of the world. We not only welcome businessmen from developed countries, we also welcome investors from other developing countries. So we welcome Botswana businessmen to do business, to invest in China.
While some Chinese construction companies have done a good job of training Botswana and delivering projects on time and on budget, we asked Ambassador Zheng as to what the extent of the bad publicity regarding the relationship between Chinese companies and citizen employees, as well as complaints of poor workmanship, keep him up at night.
Since I came to this country, I visited some Chinese construction companies. I went to their offices. I found in the same room, they have a lot of local high-ranking employees. They are working together for many years. So I think the relationship between owner and the employees are good in this country. I talked to them, how do you think about the local employees? They say, actually, they love to do this because, just as I mentioned, sometimes because of the difference of culture, the difference because of problem of the language barrier, they sometimes have difficulties to communicate with the local people. They found through the local employees, they can establish very good relationships with the local people. They can get themselves more involved in the Botswana society.
So the press regarding poor workmanship and late deadlines and bad relations are unsubstantiated?
For the bad workmanship, yes, I found since I came here, I read a lot of reports on the newspaper about their comments, negative comments on Chinese companies, especially construction companies. And actually, within our embassy, we discuss this issue with our Chinese companies. And I also visited the headquarters of Chinese companies in Botswana. I found on their walls, there are a lot of beautiful pictures to show the buildings they constructed in Botswana. They are all in good shape, in good quality, and delivered in time. That means I don't know how many projects they have built since they came to Botswana. Maybe hundreds of them. Most of the projects they finished in good quality and in time, but only in recent years some projects have some problem. And I think the reason for that is, as I always said, is many-sided. Chinese company have their own responsibility. Yeah, they are dealing with this issue in a very objective way. They want to cooperate with the Botswana the owners to tackle this issue.
To conclude our program, let us revisit some of Ambassador Zheng's thought-provoking views on the motivations behind the critics and detractors of the China-Africa relationship.
I'm very curious and interested to where this new word comes from. I found these new words, the so-called new colonialism, this new terminology, are not coming from Africa. Actually, they came from other part of the world. I believe the good or not good of cooperation between China and African countries can only be judged by African people, not by other people. And we agree, we admit that there are some problems between China, Africa, economic cooperation. And if African people think it's good, we will continue. If African people think it's not good for African people, I think China and Africa can sit together to discuss how to resolve this problem. I think it's nothing to do with the new colonialism. It's both sides are discussing one thing on a very equal basis. No one coerces each other.
Tonight we learned that China's approach to Africa is apparently similar to that everywhere else, to seek out opportunities for growth and business. From me, Namito Sibina, the team behind First Issues, and our sponsors First National Bank, One Shanghao.